Thank you so much, Kim Miles, for being with us here today and for getting everyone warmed up. Hopefully you've had a chance to catch up. My name is Sydney Zeffirina Poliaris, and I'm a senior English major and Italian minor. This is my third and unfortunately last year on the Women in Business Committee. It is an honor for me today to introduce and welcome this year's keynote speaker, Aimee Bell, class of 1988, as we celebrate 10 years of women in business at Holy Cross. As deputy editor at Vanity Fair magazine, Aimee has edited an array of celebrated columnists, writers, and cultural figures. Over her 23-year tenure at Vanity Fair, she has created a platform for success by leveraging the skills she learned here at Holy Cross. In 2014, she was a recipient of the Sancte Crucis Award for her extraordinary professional accomplishments and for her support of established and emerging writers. Today, we have the privilege of hearing how one of our successful alumni has distinguished herself in the publishing industry through applying her liberal arts education and, in Aimee's case, as an English major. Please join me in welcoming Aimee Bell for our 10th anniversary keynote speaker.
Thank you, Sydney, for the introduction and for all your kind help preparing for this day. Thank you, Dean Frigie and Professor Chu, for the great honor of being here on the 10th anniversary of the Women in Business Conference at Holy Cross, a place that means so much to all of us. 41 years after the first women graduated, I'm humbled by the achievements of the keynote speakers who have come before me. Professor Chu invited me to speak on this year's conference theme, Major in Anything, Succeed in Business. The alumnae in attendance embody this theme. We graduated from a small liberal arts college and charged into the workplace. Some of you may have majored in economics or accounting, or even the dreaded double major ECO-AC, but none of us attended a university that offered pre-professional majors, these majors with inexplicable names, such as marketing or communications or systems. Do these students read books? Do they write papers? Do they look at artwork? Did they learn about the Greek myths? We had no choice but to immerse ourselves in the study of the liberal arts. This has not impeded our path to success. In fact, it probably has paved it. I personally know at least one history major here today who works very successfully in finance, Liz Fell, class of 87, and one lawyer, Gail Egan, also 87, who majored in poli-sci and minored in French. The article on the conference on the school's website mentioned a recent graduate named Alexandra Schiffman, class of 2015. She is an e-commerce sales associate analyst at PepsiCo. She was a double major here in French and sociology. And an alum who is not in the audience today, because he's a man in business, Paul Baker, 81, chairman and CEO of Ecolab, a Fortune 500 company dealing in clean water, was just named one of the world's best performing CEOs by the Harvard Business Review. He was an English major. He didn't even go to business school. And he probably knows no better than I do what a systems major is. A study by the Annapolis Group, an alliance of liberal arts colleges, concluded that liberal arts graduates are more likely to say their college was highly effective in helping them get their first job or get into graduate school than alumni from other types of public and private institutions. Liberal arts graduates also credit their undergraduate experience with helping them develop a broad range of important skills. This broad range of important skills is absorbed almost by osmosis at Holy Cross. Foremost are, of course, the skills to think analytically, read critically, and write effectively. These are the hallmarks of a liberal arts education, and they are instilled to great effect here on Mount St. James. Not possessing these skills can indeed hold you back. Billionaire hedge fund manager Paul Tudor Jones recently held forth on Bloomberg.com on how crucial writing ability is to all professions. Companies save money when their executives write logically and coherently, he observed. Writing clearly to a peer can help an employee get to the heart of their problem and find a solution faster. You would not believe the number of people who are unable to write effective memos emails, or cover letters out there in the workplace. People who are being paid to do these things and presumably to do them well. On a daily basis, I receive pitches from writers and publicists replete with bad grammar, unclear points, and misspellings, including my name. As a product of a Jesuit education, I find this sloppiness, this lack of rigor, literally painful. In my 23 years at Vanity Fair, I've had nearly a dozen assistants, and I have supervised countless interns. I have interviewed, formally and informationally, hundreds of job candidates. I don't care what they majored in. I especially don't care if they majored in journalism, which I feel can only be really learned on the job. I don't care about their GPAs or their SAT scores. Please, I beg you, young soon-to-be graduates, leave those scores off your resume. I care about their capability. One journalism major I hired to be my editorial assistant was lacking in basic world knowledge. She had misspelled confident in her cover letter, and I should have known then, but I gave her a chance. Then one day she had to fill out a form for the photo department, identifying all names mentioned in a story I was editing. This was pre-Google times, if you can fathom them. And she did not know who Graham Greene was. I gave her hints. Travels with my aunt, Brighton Rock. No clue whatsoever. We never really recovered from that moment. She had to go work for another editor and then indeed moved on to the world of finance. If you have too narrow a focus, how useful in your studies, how useful and how relevant will those skills be in 10 years or even 5? Had I attended a college other than Holy Cross, perish the thought, and majored in journalism, the course offerings in the mid-1980s would not have included instruction on many of the aspects of the industry so important in this field today. There would not be Digital Media 101, there would not have been social media maximization, building your brand, or intro to app creation, no Snapchat seminar. I could go on. Regardless of your major, the mere fact of being in a college environment sets you up with life skills to help you function in the workplace. You acquire, one hopes, the ability to meet deadlines, lots of them, with due dates throughout the semester. You learn how to prioritize. If your English paper is due Monday and your Spanish paper is due Thursday, you figure out pretty fast that you write the English paper first. You learn how to multitask. You learn how to speak publicly. When there are only 10 people in your Shakespeare seminar, you cannot remain mute, even if you did not complete the reading assignment. I speak from experience. Sorry, Professor Callahan. You learn to live with people who are not your relatives and communicate with them constructively. Cube that, no, multiply it by 1,000, and that is what operating in the workplace is like. Who would have thought that all my negotiations with my roommates at our shabby house on Chelsea Street, over whose turn it was to do the pile of dishes, all borrowed from Kimball, would prove useful for useful training for working out conflicts with the art department. Who knew that shooting the gap would be helpful in enduring stressful situations in the office? Collaboration is a central part of being successful in the workplace, unless, of course, you intend on becoming a long-haul trucker. So how then to best choose a major that will set you up to succeed? A 2013 New York Times column wisely suggested, when it comes to choosing a major, you should engage with things that you care about, that interest you, and that will produce your strongest efforts. Your major must not be the path of least resistance or an excuse for narrowness. Become the kind of person who is interested in everything and can do anything. I think that kind of says it all. I am on the Holy Cross Marketing Committee, and one of the most impressive committee members is Susan Jurovics, class of '89. She held major jobs at Sony, Nickelodeon, and Mattel before becoming CEO of Pottermore, J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter website. I don't think she even had to put on a sorting hat to get that amazing job. Susan is a CEO, and her major was visual arts. In an interview with Holy Cross magazine, she explained, "I studied visual arts because I really loved it, both history and studio. My logic was very basic. If I found something I loved doing, I could find a way to make a living at it and contribute meaningfully to society." This demonstrates that one's major informs, but does not define who you are and what you will be. You could probably have guessed that Barack Obama majored in political science, but I had to look that up. It's not a big headline in his biography. Just as there is no one college to attend to guarantee success in a certain field, not every Ivy League graduate is a Nobel Prize winner, and not every Nobel Prize winner is an Ivy League graduate. There is no one major that unlocks the secrets to success. Otherwise, everyone would opt to drop out of college, like Steve Jobs and Bill Gates. For the record, Jobs never declared a major during his short time at Reed, and Gates was briefly a math major at Harvard. Follow your own path. In a New York Times article that ran this past summer, Nathan Gebhardt, a co-founder of Road Trip Nation, a website that collects interesting interviews of people's life stories, wrote, "Most people are unsure when they're starting out. Where they end up isn't a direct result of their major. It's a result of a meandering process." Even if you are quite certain of your career goals when you are starting out, as I was, you might end up meandering, as I most certainly did. From the moment I arrived on Mount St. James in September 1984 till the day I graduated in May 1988, I knew exactly what I was going to be when I grew up: an English professor. Therefore, inevitably, I was an English major. I reveled in Shakespeare class when I did the reading with Professor Callahan, swooned over eminent Victorians with Professor Boyd, loved being introduced to the works of Toni Morrison and Margaret Atwood in my seminar with Professor Morse. After graduation, I took a gap year in Washington, D.C., doing volunteer work, a hallmark of Holy Cross graduates, which really is a very rare thing in this world. Then headed to NYU to get my master's degree in English. I was really excited. I was following my chosen path. I envisioned my life walking around a leafy New England campus with an armload of papers to grade, wearing a comfy cardigan with an overweight Irish setter named Falstaff, or maybe a golden retriever named Holden Caulfield in tow. But on day 2 of my grad school classes, I had a terrible realization. I had no actual desire to become an English professor. I was more in love with the fantasy image than the reality. I wanted to sit in English classes, not teach them. I did not want to write long, in-depth papers. I wanted to read books for pleasure. I was not prepared for the hard work that it takes to get a PhD. Even so, having no other plans, having taken out a boatload of student loans, and considering the possibility that I was just having a little wobble and would change my mind again, I toughed it out with my studies and made it through the first year. Contemplating my summer plans, I decided to investigate magazine internships on a bit of a lark. I thought it might be a pleasant diversion from the heavy load of grad school literature. I'd always loved magazines, from my days as a devoted reader of Highlights, Cricket, and Dynamite, a 1970s scholastic tween equivalent of People magazine, lots of pictures of Fonzie, Donny Osmond, Sean Cassidy, and later on to The New Yorker, Manhattan Ink, and even Holy Cross magazine, the alumni magazine, which I was obsessed with the obits section. I applied to 3 summer internship programs: Harper's, the literary publication, not the fashion magazine, Interview, and Spy. I was turned down at Harper's. Interview offered an unpaid position. Spy offered $50 a week. This seemed like a windfall, so I readily accepted it. My employers did not care that I was an English major. They cared that I would accept $50 a week and work really, really hard. I fell in love with the work. Something kicked into gear. My formerly semi-slacker self was the first one to arrive at the office in the morning and the last one to leave at night. I had found my métier. I remember a classmate telling me, "You're no fun anymore," when I wouldn't go out on the town after a B-52's concert at Carnegie Hall because I wanted to be rested for my job the next morning. I loved doing research, writing captions, working with writers. I suddenly became driven. There was no task too small. Prank calling TV shows such as Full House, offering up celebrities like Meryl Streep and Sting as guest stars. No task too large, reporting an actual serious feature story on Queen Noor of Jordan. to undertake. It was a shoestring operation. And one day when the Xerox machine was out of toner and we had no money to pay for it, I sold review copies of books called in from publishers to the Strand bookstore. Suddenly I was the favorite intern, and I was asked to stay on when the summer was over. Chaucer suddenly seemed a distant memory. I finished my graduate degree by attending classes at night, and I've worked for my same boss, Graydon Carter, at 3 different publications, Spy, The New York Observer, and Vanity Fair, since that summer. You can neither major nor minor in the more fundamental qualities that are essential to success: work ethic, attention to detail, follow through, and ingenuity. I developed these qualities as I found my path. My story demonstrates how fate has a way of intervening in your career path. This can involve a change of heart, like I had, but it also might mean enduring a rejection, which I also did. This rejection, however devastating at the time, might end up pointing you in the right direction or save you from heading down the wrong career path. After graduation, I applied for a position as a speechwriter at the Korean Embassy in Washington. Sounded like a fascinating job, Embassy Row. But I realized in hindsight, I botched the interview. It was the year of the Seoul Olympics, and to mark the occasion, Harper's Magazine published a guide to Korean behavioral norms. From this, I learned that by crossing my legs and nervously jiggling my foot during the interview, I had inadvertently signaled that I was a prostitute. I was truly disappointed to have been turned down, but what if I had gotten that job? Today, I might be writing anti-Kim Jong-un speeches after years of writing anti-Kim Jong-il speeches, rather than editing writers such as Christopher Hitchens and Fran Lebowitz, working on the International Best Dressed list, occasionally attending the Vanity Fair Oscar party, and being here before you today. Some of my favorite life lesson examples are extremely successful people who changed paths due to an early rejection. Career diplomat Richard Holbrooke was the architect of the 1995 Dayton Peace Accords, which ended the war in Bosnia. I'll quote from his New York Times obituary. At Brown University, he majored in history and was the editor of the student newspaper. He intended to become a journalist, but after graduating in 1962, he was turned down by the Times and joined the State Department as a Foreign Service officer. The rest is literally history. CNN President Jeff Zucker graduated from Harvard as an American history major in 1986. 2 years later, he applied to Harvard Law School. He didn't get in, probably the first rejection of his life. Instead, he took a job as a researcher for NBC, which was getting ready for the aforementioned 1988 Seoul Olympics. The next year, he became a field producer at the Today Show. By 1992, he was executive producer of the show. In 2000, he was named NBC president, and 5 years later, CEO of the network. Jeff now says, I didn't get into Harvard Law School, and I thank God every day. When Cosmopolitan editor Joanna Coles was starting out in journalism, she applied for a promotion to be the arts editor at the Guardian newspaper. She was turned down and, of course, disappointed. But 6 months later, the position of New York correspondent opened up at the paper. This led her to relocate to New York, and her incredible move up magazine mastheads. Had she gotten the arts editor position, she would have stayed in London and not had her global career as one of the most prominent and influential women in journalism. And Mary Donahue Quinlan in the audience today, class of '76, would not have such a dynamic boss. So a rejection can end up pointing you in the right direction. You all have the foundation of a rich liberal arts education to know how to navigate this. When I started out in 1990, there were more than 14,000 magazine titles published annually. Today, the number is half that. The concept of an iPad edition, an ebook, would have seemed like something out of a Star Trek episode. When my father graduated from Holy Cross in 1963, he and his classmates were entering a very different labor market. People, mostly men, took company jobs for life. My father went on to UPenn Law School and then spent nearly his entire career working for General Electric. My father-in-law worked for General Motors for his entire working life, the better part of half a century. And my mother-in-law was a scientist at Johnson & Johnson for the whole of her 4-decade career. This narrative is a thing of the past. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the average worker currently holds 10 different jobs before age 40, and this number is projected to grow. The target is moving, the paradigm is shifting. Interesting, lucrative business opportunities that will be prevalent a decade from now, even a year from now, might not even exist yet. A few years ago, who could have predicted that podcast producer or e-concierge would be a career option? The aforementioned Times op-ed noted, there are no guarantees for young people now when it comes to using college to prepare for a job. The world is changing too quickly to make reliable predictions. Assume that you will have many careers and that you will need to find ways to adapt your talents to the world's needs. It goes on to say that the best place to do that is a liberal arts college. I might add that the best place to do that is the College of the Holy Cross. When I came to Holy Cross last fall for the Sancte Crucis Awards ceremony, my guide was an intelligent and capable senior named Caitlin Pettit, who is here today. She recently wrote to me of her first job after college in Boston at a company called Working Life Media. I quote, "We work in small business growth, consulting with a variety of companies to help make their ideas a reality. Not where I saw myself being post-graduation, but I actually love the work I'm doing here." And her boss is a fellow alumna, also here today. Like Caitlin, I ended up not where I saw myself being post-graduation, but my English degree provided the foundation for the skills I use at work every day: reading, writing, editing. I'm also the books editor at VF, so being well-read, while not necessarily a prerequisite, certainly puts me at a great advantage. But it's a class I took outside of my major that unexpectedly turned out to be most tangibly applicable to my job: Islam and Politics with Professor Esposito, fulfilling my religion requirement. First, it helped me with my reporting on the Queen Noor feature at SPY. At Vanity Fair, my familiarity with the region and its complex history turned out to be relevant after the tragedy of 9/11. I even consulted with Professor Esposito, now at Georgetown, to get story ideas. We had lunch at Le Cirque, it was really fun. Above all, the course provided a wealth of knowledge that was put to use when I was editing Christopher Hitchens' columns, as he often wrote about Islam and politics. Also very handy for working with Christopher Hitchens, who notoriously enjoyed his Johnny Walker Black. At such venerated Worcester establishments as Magoo's Irish House and Jodie's, I learned to hold my liquor. Truly a life skill. Aside from the skills, all of them, acquired at a place of such high standards, the tight-knit bond of the student body here and the alumni network will stay with you for the rest of your life, no matter what your major. I encourage the students in the audience to reach out to people whose jobs seem interesting to you and ask what their days are like. Ask them what best prepared them for their work environment. I talk to aspiring journalists at least once a week. My schedule is insane. I'm completely maxed out at all moments, but I will always make time for a meeting with a Holy Cross graduate. I meet with lots of non-Holy Cross graduates too and encourage them to reach out to their own alumni networks. It is often the first time they have received this advice, but it's second nature to us citizens of Crusader Nation. It's a powerful and loyal alumni network and an asset to all of us women in business. Thank you.